So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and for the past week or so I've had the privilege of using this new Pixel 6 Pro as a Apple only user, and I do have some thoughts on it. And to start off the video, we're using the selfie camera in 4K. I'm using the speech enhancement feature inside of the settings, and I'm just using it handheld with no external microphone. So the audio and the video that you're hearing right now is coming directly from the Pixel 6 Pro, unedited, and then we're going to continue on with this review. But without further ado, I have some thoughts on it as an Apple-only user, and this is my first Pixel in a very, very, very long time. So let's get into this review. Okay, so as you guys saw, the first part of the video is actually, like I said, the selfie camera to let you guys know, or give you an idea of how the audio sounds coming directly from the actual Google Pixel, and then also how the selfie camera video in 4K does come out. And overall, pretty impressive, pretty impressive. But what I want to start off with is actually the transition. So you guys can see it in the title, I'm an Apple first user, right? We're using an iPhone to record this video. I edit everything on my iPad. I use AirDrop and iMessage 24/7. And then for some other tasks, like desktop level tasks, I move over to macOS and my MacBook Air. But the main thing that I want to talk about is the actual transition, because yes, as Apple users, I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible and give you guys my experience. And the transition is going to be the hardest part. The actual physical transition. If you are in this walled garden of the Apple ecosystem, in order for you to get your SIM card into here and have everything working how you want it to work, you have to do a couple of things, right? You have to disassociate your iMessage. You have to disassociate your iCloud. You have to get rid of Find My and log out of all of that on your actual iPhone. Because if you're working off of an iOS device, where the main form of contact is your cell phone number, because you can actually use iMessage with an email and other actual forms of communication with the iMessage and with AirDrop and to create an iCloud account. But if your main form of iCloud is your phone number, you have to disassociate it. And the only way to disassociate it is to basically cancel everything, log out of everything, and then when you're done, if you still have an iPad that you want to log into for iCloud, you can still do that with your email. But if you want to get your phone number and you want your phone number to work correctly on this Google Pixel 6, you're going to have to get rid of iMessage, you're going to have to get rid of iCloud, you got to get rid of the Find My situation. And that to me was the hardest part. That was the hardest part of the transition. Because the moment you do that, you get kicked out of your iMessage groups, and that's the main way that I communicate. And I know a lot of people are going to say, there's WhatsApp, there's Telegram, and yes, those are great alternatives to iMessage. But in my main circle, everybody has iMessage, right? My entire family uses iMessage, I'm in group chats with my entire family. And if I pull myself out and start going with the green bubbles, then it messes up the flow of that iMessage and being able to share images and share GIFs and be able to react to messages in real time and things like that. So unless I want to tell my entire social circle to move to WhatsApp or Telegram or Facebook Messenger or something like that, then it creates an immediate roadblock to wanting to do that, right? So that right there was by far the hardest transition from actually moving my SIM card from the iPhone and moving it into the Pixel 6 Pro. It was a little bit difficult in terms of, maybe it wasn't difficult from a physical standpoint, but mentally it was a little bit hard to actually let go a little bit and actually get that done. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, just use WhatsApp and Telegram and you Apple users are way too locked into your garden and blah, 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 blah. But it's just something that we're used to, right? Something that I've gotten used to over, I don't know, when did iMessage come out? Back in 2010, 2011, and I've had every single iPhone since the beginning of the iPhone release date, and I've just been locked into that garden. All my services are on there besides Spotify. You know, I use everything that Apple has to offer. I use it on all of my devices, and that ecosystem works so well. That's why it was so hard to pull away and immediately kind of go into the Android world. So I did want to start that video with talking about that transition from iPhone over to Android, and that was the hardest part, just releasing from iCloud, logging out of all that, disassociating your phone number, and then moving your SIM card over to the Google Pixel. But once that's done, right, once you get over that mental hurdle of going from iOS over to Google and over to Android, things really aren't that bad. Things are not that bad. But let's go into the actual design of this thing, because this design, honestly, Google gets a round of applause for me, right? Like, I had the Google Pixel 5a that was sent over to me. I did not use that as my main phone at all, and I did like the device. I liked the form factor, I liked the hardware, I liked how simple and minimal it looked, but it was different, right? It felt more plastic, it felt lighter, it felt, again, a little bit cheaper, and it was I think $499 for the Google Pixel 5a, and with 5G, so for that price, you got everything that you were expecting. But now we're spending $900 on an Android device, on a Google Android device, and now we're expecting it to be a little bit nicer. And honestly, for $900, I expected this to be, $1,000, $1,100, even $1,200, right? Because the way they created this and the finishes and the glossiness and just how it's really made from a hardware perspective is really nice. It's still very lightweight. It feels thin in the hand. They were able to fit a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in something super, super thin, which is something that Apple couldn't do, right? The Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max is a beefy device. It is very heavy, it's very squared off, it's very thick, and I think in there they couldn't even get to 4,000 milliamp hours. Yes, they're optimized on iOS to run very, very smoothly, and the battery life is actually really good, but from an actual physical standpoint, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is way thicker, it feels way heavier in the hand, and it's a little bit more tedious to handle than this guy in your hand. So far from a physical design standpoint, I'm enjoying this a lot. And even the curved edges. I'm not a big fan of curved edges, and I remember using a Samsung Note 10 5G with those super curved edges. I didn't like that. But the curved edges here are a little bit more subtle, right? I would prefer a flat screen. I'm gonna be honest, I'll prefer a flat screen. But if I were to go with these like bleeding curved sides, this is perfect. The amount that it's actually bleeding over is perfect. It's not annoying to deal with. You know, I'm not doing any accidental touches. My palm, when it rests kind of on the bottom right of the phone, haven't had any issues with it. And honestly, I've had a couple issues with that on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is something that I do have to bring up on in a separate video. And then internally, we're dealing with actually 12 gigs of RAM. I know my first video I said 8 gigs of RAM. I'm sorry about that. Everybody kind of attacked me in the comments. But you do get 12 gigs of RAM on all the models, and you can go with 128 gigs, 256, or up to 512 gigs of storage. But it's nice to have 12 gigs of RAM, and so far that RAM is translated into great multitasking power. None of my apps have actually reloaded or kind of quit out on its own or anything like that. So RAM management on this thing has been awesome, and I think it has to do with the new Tensor chip. So that new Tensor chip is Google's attempt to compete with Qualcomm, right? Get rid of all those Snapdragon processors and have full control of their vertical tech stack, right? And being able to control from beginning to end what they want their chipset to do and how to optimize their chipset properly. Obviously, we've seen Apple do with their A15 or their A series chip. They moved that now over to desktop. And I think Google's going to have something similar, right? They're starting with these phones right now, with the Android phones. And don't be surprised if we start getting some actual tablets, because I know the Google Slate, did not live up to the hype. We might get some new form of Chromebooks, which will probably help compete from an ecosystem level over with Apple, because right now that's what Apple has going for it. Yes, their devices are nice and they work and all that, but it's the ecosystem that really keeps you in, because like I said, the hardest part was mentally releasing myself from iOS, from iMessage, from AirDrop, and all of those things. And then to keep going with the hardware overall, what they did here, we do have this new like visor kind of Daft Punk camera situation. So some people like it, some people don't. I kind of like it because it's like a statement, it's a brand statement. So like this is going to look like a Google Pixel, and no other phone is going to be confused for this phone. Very similar to how Apple, does their like notch. They've embraced that as kind of like a brand sign and a brand symbol. So I think they're doing the same thing with this rear camera kind of jutting out all the way across, which I'm a big fan of. I kind of like it. Like I said, it makes it seem like it's a brand new phone, and it's something that nobody else is going to confuse. And if we continue with the hardware, they actually move the power button from the left-hand side of the phone to the right-hand side of the phone. So there's actually nothing besides the SIM card tray on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, you have the volume up and down rocker, and then the lock button right above it. So honestly, I got used to it very, very quickly. People were like, oh, why'd they switch it over? One thing that people do miss is the accent color on the lock button. I didn't have those phones, so I'm not missing anything, but it does look nice. So overall, happy with the button placement. And also with the camera bump that I was mentioning earlier, it kind of acts as a little rest for your finger. So almost like a built-in pop socket is how I'm kind of equating it to, so it doesn't feel like it's going to slip out of your hand, unless you add a case that kind of neutralizes this little divot right here. I kind of like to rock it bare bones, but that's just my personal decision. Then from a SIM card situation, you have one physical SIM, and then this is eSIM compatible, so this is a dual SIM card phone. So if you have two phone numbers that you want to throw in here, by all means, throw it in there. And then if you continue to look at the hardware on the top, you can see that the entire phone, all the railings are all glossy and shiny and kind of like titanium looking. But on the top, it's actually a matte finish. And that's for the 5G band antennas, so it could pass through a little bit easier. So just so you know, on top, it is a little bit of a different texture, and it's more of a matte black versus the shiny glossy black that we see around the entire phone. And then lastly, for authentication and unlocking the phone, they did add an in-screen fingerprint scanner, which I personally think it's great. So I really like the implementation of an in-screen fingerprint scanner, and I would gladly tell Apple to go with that route instead of doing Face ID, just to kind of get rid of that notch. But overall, I do like it. It's very, very quick, very responsive. The setup process takes a little bit longer, but I think that's on purpose, just so it can capture the entirety of your thumb. And even when my thumb is a little bit wet, a little sweaty, it's been working. I've had no issues with this finger unlock. And then to bypass that, if there is some issues, there's a number unlock. You get a 4-pin number to unlock your phone, but there is no actual face unlock. So not even a regular picture detection. There's no face unlock whatsoever. So now we got the hardware, we got the look, we got the specs out of the way. The next thing we're going to talk about are these cameras, because these cameras, obviously what set Pixel apart, or what's giving them their value, especially since the very first Pixel, was their still cameras, right? Their still camera photography has been out of this world, especially from a hardware standpoint. People couldn't believe, I remember with the first Pixel and the second Pixel, that a single lens could produce such an amazing still quality image. And to that point, it's still true, right? So what they did here, but now we have a completely different setup. So this is a triple camera array on the back. We have 3 different cameras, like I mentioned. We have a regular wide angle camera, which is a 50 megapixel camera. Then we have a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then finally we have that new 4x telephoto, which is a 48 megapixel camera. So you get up to 4x optical zoom with this new periscope technology, which has been around in other phones, but obviously Google brought it onto theirs, and they perfected it honestly. Like from a picture standpoint, as long as you have good lighting or even some pretty poor lighting, you get some great images. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of images that I took of my dog, right? Because that's kind of what I have around, and I think he's a great color to kind of reproduce those colors from a great lighting situation. So we have the regular camera, we have the ultra wide camera, and then we also have, like I said, the 4x telephoto camera. And again, it's amazing to see how such small devices and how such a small form factor can produce something so amazing. Even when you zoom in at that 4x telephoto camera, like I thought we would lose some quality, maybe because it would do something like digital zoom, but no, from a 4x standpoint, optical zoom looks absolutely great, and you'll be happy with pretty much every image that you get from this camera. I'm not gonna lie to you. And then the selfie camera is actually an 11.1 megapixel camera, and it gives you a 112 degree viewing angle, so they did bring back the wide camera angle on the selfie camera, and the selfie camera works fine. You know, as long as you have good lighting, you're in a good situation, you can get some pretty crisp photos, but it's mostly there for, I'm not gonna say FaceTime because it's not FaceTime, you know, for a Google Hangouts or any other video chat service that you use. It works exactly as advertised. So now we got the hardware of the cameras out of the way. They did add a couple of awesome software features on the camera side. And obviously the main one has to be that magic eraser. So the magic eraser allows you to take a picture of whatever you want and then go into it, edit it after, and literally remove things from the actual backdrop. So let's say you have a picture of yourself and there's a bunch of stuff in the background, you can actually use the magic eraser to get rid of it. And it's a very cool feature. It is a very cool feature. It works as advertised, and it just amazes me what they're able to do from a software standpoint to get rid of that image. I did wish it could work on video, but that'd probably be very, very hard. And this is actually a perfect segue to video. So the video camera is something that Apple has had its number for the entire industry, right? Like everybody is trying to compete with Apple to get to that video quality. But honestly, this Android phone, this Pixel 6 Pro, is getting there. It's getting really, really good. Like I remember the 5A, 5G wasn't that great. I'm not gonna lie to you, it wasn't amazing. It got the job done, but I wouldn't maybe record this video with that camera. But with this rear camera, it actually looks amazing. So you have a 4K, so you can go up to 4K 30 and 4K 60 on the rear cameras, and then on the front facing cameras, you can do 4K up to 30 FPS or 1080p up to 60 FPS. And you do have some slow-mo features, so you can go up to 240 FPS on the slow-mo features and things like that. But the main thing that you want is that 30 and 60 FPS at 4K, because, you know, I don't know at what point we're going to need 8K, especially at this level of consumption from these kind of consumers. Even for somebody like me who records videos and puts them on YouTube, I would never go to 8K, or I'm not going to say never, but I'm not going to go to 8K anytime soon. So I'm not disappointed at all, or I don't feel like I'm missing anything with people saying like, how is it possible it doesn't have 8K? Like, first of all, I don't want that much storage taken up. 8K will just make my editing and render speeds a lot slower when I don't really need it. So aside from like being able to zoom in a little bit better on an 8K like image or an 8K like screenshot of a video, there's really no point in my opinion. But there are some people that like to use it. You know, you guys use that stuff, but this does not have 8K video recording, nor should it have it, honestly. And then the very last thing that I did want to talk about is just my overall thoughts on the operating system, right? Because I've been so used to iOS for a very, very long time, with iPadOS, with macOS, so I know how those work. You know, I haven't had a learning curve on any iOS device in a very, very long time because I've just lived in it this entire time. So I wanted to see, if there was any real learning curve, right, with going to this phone over an iOS phone. And there really wasn't. Like these phones, like once you get over that mental hurdle of iMessage being dropped, right, you doing with the green bubbles, right, the fact that there is an AirDrop. So as long as you can break away from that mentally, then this is another smartphone. This is another high quality smartphone. It can do everything that I do on an iOS, right? What do I do on iOS? I go on Twitter, I go on YouTube, YouTube TV, Bleacher Report, I take pictures, I use it for video, I make a phone call every now and then, right? I'll send text messages, I am on Telegram to communicating with some other people overseas. So I can do everything, right? I can do everything that I just mentioned. I can do it right on this Google Pixel and have a very similar experience just in a different hardware form factor, right? So Twitter still works perfectly. YouTube works great. The speakers on this thing are nice and loud. You get stereo speakers on here. So whenever you're viewing content, it's great. I think the aspect ratio is like a 19.5 by 9. So it is a tall phone. So it's a little bit weird when it comes to watching video, but who cares? Like it still works fine. I can still watch everything in HD. You know, there's nothing that I'm really missing, right? Aside from, honestly, it's more AirDrop than iMessage, because AirDrop for my workflow just works a little bit better since I do edit everything on my iPad. But how did I get around that? Just upload it to Google Photos, right? You get 15 gigs of free uploads on Google Photos as long as you have a Gmail account. And literally the moment that I'm done recording on this thing, it just uploads to Google Photos and then I can download it right on here. Is it an extra step? Sure, but if I really want to use this Pixel, I can. It's just a matter of how badly do I want to use this Pixel over an iPhone because of that efficiency. So at the end of the day, it's still a smartphone, right? Like it can do everything. It takes your photos, you can check your email, you can send text, it charges up nice and fast. You get up to 30-watt fast charging plugged in and fast wireless charging, which I believe is 15 watts if you have the correct adapter. So there's really no issues with going to Android aside from that mental barrier that we're so stuck in this walled garden with iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. So that is my 2 cents. I want you guys to leave some comments down below because, like I said, this is my first time really using a Pixel phone since the Nexus 5 back in 2014, I want to say, or 2013. And back then I wasn't using a phone for what I'm using it now, right? Now phones are your production machine, they're your productivity machine, your email machine. Back then I was kind of just using it to play games in high school or play games in college, you know what I mean? It's a very different use case back then with the Nexus 5 versus this. So leave some comments down below, like what should I try out? Are there any things in the settings that I should really play with? I know my next step is going to be to download Nova Launcher, kind of get a little bit more customization, and then kind of go from there and see exactly how much farther I can take this before I get a little bit annoyed that I don't have iMessage, right? Because I know that I'm already getting some complaints from people. But again, that was my unbiased review, my unbiased opinion. I tried to be as unbiased as possible because, as you guys know, I use iOS every single day. So don't go in the comments being like, oh, just another Apple sheet. Like, I'm trying as hard as I can to be as unbiased as possible. And there's some things that I really like that I wish Apple would entail, right? Like I said, the fingerprint sensor, I wish it was in screen on the iPhone, right? Honestly, there's reverse wireless charging, which is something that nobody's really talking about. So you can just go into your notification center or go into your settings menu, your quick settings, turn it on, and you can charge an iPhone, you can charge your headphones, you can charge whatever you want, right? Just on the back of this wirelessly, which is something I want Apple to do. But that is pretty much going to do it for this video, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed. We're going to have some more videos coming up, probably like 1 week later, a full comparison between the two phones, between this one and an iPhone. So again, leave some comments down below. What else do you guys want to know? Do you guys want a day in the life kind of video with this phone? I'd be more than happy to make one of those. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, check out channel sponsor Paperlike, and until next time, peace guys. Also leave the comment down below. You guys team case or no case when you rock any phone? It doesn't even have to be this one. I'm usually team no case or team very, very thin case. Peace.